Your hard work, your identity. Full story. Part 1. The spark. The morning sun rose gently over the small town, its golden light touching every rooftop. But in a tiny corner of the city, one young man woke up before the dawn. His name was Ethan Carter. The world didn't know him yet, but his heart carried dreams too big for his pocket and a will too strong for his tired body. He tied his worn-out sneakers, the soles almost begging for rest. Yet his steps were steady because he knew every step mattered. Life had never given him favors. Every comfort had to be earned, and in those early hours he whispered to himself, "My hard work will be my name." Each day started in silence, no applause, no cheering crowd, just him, the empty streets, and the sound of his own breathing. The cold wind sometimes cut his skin, rain often soaked his clothes, but nothing could soak his determination, because comfort was never his goal. Growth was. He worked 2 jobs to survive, one in the mornings, one late at night. Between them, he trained for his dream, with every ounce of strength he had left. People laughed behind his back. Too ambitious for someone like him, they said, but he smiled quietly because he knew dreams don't check your background. One evening, exhausted from work, he looked at his reflection in the shop window, noticing the tired eyes, but also the fire burning inside them. That fire was his real wealth. That fire was his true weapon. And he promised himself to never let it die, no matter the cost. Part 2. Building the road. Days turned into weeks. Weeks slipped quietly into months, and still Ethan's alarm clock sang before sunrise, calling him to the battlefield of life. The battlefield wasn't a place with guns. It was the factory floor, the weight room, the endless streets where his dreams took shape. Every paycheck he earned was small, but every lesson he learned was priceless. Hard work taught him patience, and patience taught him strength. His friends started disappearing. Some chased quick pleasures. Some gave up before they started. But Ethan kept walking alone and proud. Sometimes loneliness sat beside him at night, whispering doubts into his ear. But he answered with a steady voice, "If I quit now, I lose the man I'm becoming." He began training for a marathon, not because he loved running, but because it mirrored life itself, long, exhausting, and beautiful in its own way. Morning runs tested his lungs, late night work tested his will, but together they built a man who didn't fear the word impossible. The neighborhood kids started noticing him. They saw him running in the rain, they saw him carrying groceries for the elderly, and they began to whisper, "That's Ethan, he's different." One afternoon, his old school teacher saw him, asked him why he worked so hard, and Ethan smiled, because the world only remembers what you fight for. Some days, his body ached so much that getting out of bed felt like war. But he told himself, "Pain is proof I'm still moving forward." At the factory, his hands grew rough, the skin tore, but so did his fear of failure. Piece by piece, it disappeared. His dream wasn't fame or luxury. It was becoming the man who could look in the mirror and say, "You earned this life." And slowly, without even realizing it, he began to inspire others because hard work has a voice and it speaks without words. Part 3. The storm before the sunrise. Winter came with its sharp teeth. Snow covered the streets Ethan once ran on, but he refused to stop because dreams don't take holidays. The wind punched his face, the cold froze his breath, yet every step he took was a punch back at his own limits. One evening, after a long shift, he found his landlord at the door. Rent was overdue. And the warning was final. That night, he sat on his bed, hands trembling, not from the cold, but from the weight of survival. Most people would have broken down, but Ethan stared at the cracked ceiling and whispered to himself, "This is just another hill, and I climb hills." He took an extra night shift, sleeping only 3 hours a day. His body screamed for rest, but his will screamed louder. Days blended into each other, like paint smearing across a canvas, some strokes dark, some strokes full of light. One morning, while running, he slipped on black ice, fell hard on his knee, pain shooting through his entire leg. The doctor told him to rest, at least 6 weeks. But Ethan only heard one thing: 6 weeks is too long to stop fighting. He trained with his upper body, did push-ups on his knuckles, pulled himself up on icy bars because quitting wasn't in his dictionary. Neighbors called him stubborn, friends called him crazy, but Ethan just smiled. If crazy builds my dream, then I'll be crazy. Every challenge became fuel. Every failure became a lesson. And slowly, His identity was being carved in stone. One snowy night, while heading to work, he saw a young boy standing outside a store, shivering without a coat. Ethan took off his own jacket, placed it around the boy's shoulders, and walked away without waiting for thanks, because kindness didn't need an audience. That moment meant more than any race he could win, because he realized true strength isn't just about you. Part 4. The Rise of Ethan Carter. Spring arrived like a promise, melting the snow, bringing color back to the streets, and hope back to tired hearts. Ethan's knee had healed, his spirit had grown stronger, and the marathon date was now circled on his calendar. The day of the race, he stood among hundreds, some in brand new gear, while he wore his patched-up sneakers. The starting horn blew, and the crowd surged forward. But Ethan ran at his own pace, steady, unshakable. Every mile reminded him of his journey, the factory shifts, the sleepless nights, the pain, the loneliness, and the small acts of kindness. By the halfway mark, his legs began to ache, but he smiled through the pain. I've run through worse storms than this. Spectators cheered, some shouted his name, but the loudest voice he heard was his own heart saying, "Keep going." In the final stretch, he saw the finish line, but more than that, he saw the boy he used to be. The boy with tired shoes, empty pockets, but dreams big enough to scare him, and the will to chase them anyway. Ethan crossed the finish line, tears mixing with sweat, and in that moment, he wasn't just a man. He was proof. Proof that your hard work shapes your identity. Proof that no background can limit your future. Proof that the world respects those who never stop climbing. When reporters asked for his secret, he simply said, "My hard work is my identity, and my identity will never quit."